Welcome everybody. Welcome to the BEREC public debriefing for our 34th plenary. It's the beginning of the BEREC year, and I'm pleased to guide you through the year 2018 as the new chairman of BEREC for this year. We have a very ambitious work program, and today we can already report some accomplishments. In order to give you an impression of what BEREC stands for, what is important to us this year, and what we plan for 2018, we have prepared a short video as an introduction.
The piano. So many different keys producing different sounds. And yet, to create that inimitable sound of the piano, all keys should be in tune and harmonized. This is what we strive for at BEREC, the body of European regulators for electronic communications. All different national regulatory authorities working together, pursuing harmony across Europe. By striving for that harmony, we are driving regulatory harmonization in Europe so that consumers and operators everywhere in the Union can benefit from an effective and competitive telecom sector. This sector needs innovation to persist and grow. We believe connectivity and 5G are the keys to prosperity. So this year, BEREC will take an important role to make Europe a leader in 5G. This new mobile technology has the potential for completely new business models, high-speed internet everywhere, and smart homes. And this is just the beginning. The upcoming challenges on our way to the digital future affect all of us, so we are reaching out to all our stakeholders, consumers, operators, and European institutions. Being on the same page and learning from each other will ease a smooth deployment of 5G in Europe. But for our digital future, we also need empowered consumers. Developing a net neutrality measurement tool, working on simplification of contracts, easing the process of switching providers, ensuring equivalence of access and choice for disabled end users, and fostering Roam like at home. With information and tools, BEREC seeks to empower consumers so they can make informed choices and engage effectively with the market. By engaging and by collaborating, together, we can write the tune for Europe's digital future.
So it's all about achieving greater harmonization in Europe, and this harmony in Europe must respect the diversity we have, and so this is what we are striving for. And this year, of course, and I've mentioned it several times before, 5G is one of our key focus areas in 2018. So, what's in today's public debriefing? We will report about the 5G study and a workshop with ENISE we held last week. We will keep you updated on what we are doing on net neutrality. We will present the roaming benchmarking report, this time for the first time with the impact of Roam like at home. We can briefly touch on what we have done on Intra-EU Calls and the common position on market 3A, 3B and 4. Maybe of special interest, the SMP Guidelines. We are preparing input to the consultation the Commission has launched, and we will also inform you about other outcomes of the plenary last week. So 5G is a strategic priority for us. We have started the year with a kind of kick-off by a study done by .econ and Exxon partners on the implications of 5G deployment and future business models. What we wanted to do is to have a kind of basic work, what 5G will look like, what the implications are, how the value chain is evolving, what the role of telecom operators will be in the future, and all of that in order to try to identify and in a second step eliminate potential hurdles for a quick deployment of 5G in Europe. The study was presented last week during a workshop, and there are some key findings we have learned. First of all, enhanced mobile broadband is likely to be the main driver of 5G deployment. Of course, 5G will also help network operators controlling the cost of growing data traffic. The study also sees a role for private deployment of 5G within spaces such as factories and warehouses. The realization of 5G use cases will be a step-by-step approach, and many potential uses are currently at a very early stage of deployment or of development. The study also touches on the topic of availability of backhaul and questions whether there will be sufficient backhaul and necessary fiber infrastructure, in particular in rural areas, available. So access to infrastructure may help, but this may not be especially effective in encouraging fiber in rural areas. The role of infrastructure sharing in 5G is also stressed. More of this is needed, but on the other hand, this has to be seen in the context of protecting competition. So this will be very important to strike the right balance between competition and more collaboration of operators. This, by the way, infrastructure sharing is a core topic of our work program 2018, and we are preparing a report on that. Finally, on this study, I want to make a disclaimer. Of course, this report does not reflect the official opinion of BEREC. The responsibility for the information and the views expressed lies entirely with the authors. We also had a workshop last week with RSPG and ENISA on cybersecurity in the context of IoT and 5G. We had several presentations, and I want to thank in particular ENISA, the EU Commission, RSPG, RISE, Security Lab, Stockholm, and Ericsson for the contributions. What we can take from this workshop, we have done this with the objective to raise more awareness among regulators, telecom regulators, for cybersecurity, because not all of us have competencies in this area. But we think when looking into IoT and 5G, cybersecurity is one of the most important elements. Of course, we have continued our work on net neutrality. During the plenary, we have adopted the consultation paper on the evaluation of the net neutrality regulation and the guidelines. We have finalized the tender for the measurement tool, and we, of course, as always, we have exchanged views on particular cases that are currently in Europe under monitoring of the respective NRAs. So coming to the net neutrality evaluation. So BEREC has kicked off the public consultation, which will go from the 13th of March until 24th of April, so 6 weeks. The objective of this consultation is to collect stakeholders' view on the net neutrality regulation on the one hand side and the actual application of the guidelines. What we receive as an input, we will work on that and then prepare our input to the Commission's evaluation that has to be done, if I'm not mistaken, by end of April 2019. So the scope of this questionnaire that we send out is, on the one hand side, the net neutrality regulation and the BEREC net neutrality guidelines. We have put together a large number of questions on concrete examples on present stakeholder experience, the application of the net neutrality rules on zero rating, traffic management, specialized services and transparency. And what is of most important to me personally and in the context of the work program of 2018, we want to look into the introduction of new technologies like 5G and their relationship with the net neutrality regulation. And this is the point where I would really ask all the stakeholders that they should provide use cases and clear examples where you think that the net neutrality regulation might conflict with future business models, use cases, and in particular with a view to network slicing. The next point on net neutrality was that we have discussed the tender document for the net neutrality measurement tool. As reported already last year after plenary 2, BEREC will develop a reference measurement tool in order to allow national regulatory authorities to opt in and build their own tool based upon this reference measurement tool nationally. This tool should help NRAs and, of course, end users to measure the quality of fixed or mobile internet access services and detect potential illegal traffic management practices such as blocking or throttling of specific applications. We have now finalized the tender, and the tender will be out soon, and the tender phase will go until end of summer, and the planned go live of this tool will be in September 2019. And features of this tool will be, of course, the quality of the internet access, the minimum quality of service parameters as defined in the TSM regulation, and also there are mandatory and optional functions like port blocking, speed, latency, delay variations, or blocking of IP addresses. So the document will be published soon, and we invite companies to apply for this measurement tool. On international roaming, BEREC is publishing twice a year the so-called roaming benchmark report, and this time, for the first time, it includes latest news and data on the implementation of Roam like at home. So from an end user point of view, Roam like at home is a clear success. And I will present now a few data on what we found on Roam like at home. So 96% of subscribers are roaming enabled in the EU and the European Economic Area. And out of this 96, 88% of active subscribers actually use Roam like at home services. And what we have seen in the retail volumes, we have, especially for data roaming, significant increases. This holds also true for voice and SMS, but to a much smaller extent. And the wholesale rates are well below the regulated caps, and the lowest rates are even below the cost estimates that came out of the DERA cost model done by the European Commission. So the most significant increase we have seen is in volumes due to Roam Like at Home in data traffic. And you can see compared to Q3 2016, we have in Q3 2017 an increase of 435% in total traffic of data services. So obviously, Roam Like at Home has really tackled a concrete need of European citizens. What we also can mention is that there are, from a usage perspective, differences or large differences among member states on data usage. So this data usage varies from 59 megabyte per month for one member state to up to 1.6 gigabyte per month and users. On the wholesale roaming prices, as mentioned, we see the prices below the caps and below the cost estimates provided by DERA. So as you can see on this chart, on the far left side, on the voice minutes, you see the blue bar, the cap, the regulated cap, and the lowest price paid as the red bar, much lower, also the lowest price charged, and the DERA cost estimate in the violet bar. So, and this is what we should clearly mention here in all cases. So for voice, SMS, and data, the lowest prices and charges are below the cost estimates of DERA. What BEREC does now, we will not draw any conclusion out of this. It's just a report to provide figures, but all of this data will feed into an input for the Commission's review of the regulation that will be carried out at the end of 2019. Coming to a very similar topic on intra-EU calls. So in October 2017, the European Parliament proposed to regulate intra-EU calls. And in order to give legislators detailed information for an informed decision, BEREC has decided to collect data in order to provide technical expertise. Based upon this data, BEREC has recently published a preliminary analysis of intra-EU calls. And it covers fixed and mobile markets, the 5-year time period between 2013 and 2017, and both in a quantitative and qualitative way. So we send out a questionnaire to operators to provide data due to lack of data at NRAs, because, as you know, this is not a relevant market for us. We have perceived it as competitive, so there was no need to collect data over the years. So what are the main findings and the next steps on this topic? We have found out that intra-EU calls represent just a tiny fraction of all voice minutes, and it varies from 0.9% to 7% for fixed networks in 2017, and 0.3 to 13.4% for mobile networks. We have also seen a decline, and I would say a sharp decline over the last years. In average, approximately 14% per year in the last 5 years. And the average intra-EU revenues on the fixed side are approximately 10 euro cents and on mobile 15 euro cents. And we have, of course, evidence that traditional international calls by telecom operators are substituted by OTTs. We have, or several NRAs have done studies on that, and we have seen between 30 and 40% of this traffic is substituted by OTTs. What is next? We will continue our analysis and publish further results at the end of April. This is because the validation of data has taken substantial time, and we want to analyze it in further detail, and we also want to include more countries because this data is not based on all EU countries. So based upon the quality of the data, we had to choose and pick only several countries. But we want to do further analysis on that and want to include as many countries as possible. We will also take a closer look then on SMS, because this is also covered under the EU Parliament proposal. What have we done so far on the SMP guidelines? As you know, we have received a draft of the SMP guidelines by the European Commission on the 14th of February this year. And we are about to finalize the BEREC opinion on the SMP guidelines by the end of this week. We are currently in a comments round, and until end of this week we will have a decision on that. And we will publish the opinion on Monday next week. It's March 19th. For today, unfortunately, we cannot therefore not present more than just what I said. During our plenary, we have also approved the report on the need to review the common positions on markets 3A, 3B and 4. These common positions stem from the year 2012, and this was before the non-discrimination recommendation, before the cost reduction directive, and before the new recommendation on relevant markets. So we found it is time to look at it, whether it's necessary to update this common position. What we have broadly found, that this common position is still fit for purpose. We have identified some room for amendments or updates, but there is no urgent need for a full review. We will continue this year with an internal workshop in the second half of 2018, in particular to take into account the European Communication Code. And then we will decide on a full review and revision of the common position, which is likely for 2019, but it's still subject to the Board of Regulators' decision on the work program. So, and if you have particular questions on that, I have here my colleague from Ofcom, Charles Shearer. He will be happy to take your question on that. So, what other documents have you adopted in Bratislava last week? We have adopted a report on NRA's practices on equivalent access and choice for disabled end users. And let me emphasize one thing on this report. So the clear outcome to me is that in this area we have to do more. We have to do more on a legislator's level. We have to do more on national regulatory authority level. We as a society could do much more on European, national and regional level. So this is for me personally one of the key findings out of this report. A second report that was adopted last week is the BEREC Report on the impact of premium content on ECS markets and the effect of devices on the open use of the Internet, including BEREC public consultation report. So we have published now, or we are about to publish, on the one hand side, the report on the consultation and, of course, the final report. And what we have seen so far from stakeholder feedback, this feedback is diverging a little bit. So on the one hand side, we have feedback that the report underestimates the risk identified. And on the other hand, we have feedback that says the report correctly assesses the potential threats. So we are a little bit struggling with the stakeholder feedback. But all in all, we can see that there is a growing trend of ECS premium content bundling strategies. So this has, of course, impact on consumers. On the one hand side, lower prices and convenience, but there are some key issues on competition side, like the ability of alternative providers to compete with such offers. And from a regulatory point of view, it is much more difficult to handle it. For instance, if you think about the economic replicability test, the complexity is increasing, of course, and we have seen that there is a need of more collaboration among regulatory authorities, and in particular also with the competition authorities. On the devices, the objective was to analyze whether devices might challenge the objective of an open internet. What we have seen is that software might be more relevant than hardware. What we have seen also is the importance of the app format and the gatekeeper role of app stores. From our point of view, it's not too concerning, but I think we should invest more work on that. And the question is also whether there are, or how high the barriers to the entry, the barriers of entry to the operating system market are. So, what's next? We have decided in Bratislava to work more on open data. We have taken a look into our open data policy and the way we are publishing the data we have. We have decided to create, to draft an open data policy, and the first open data will be published end of the year. But we have also seen that further work has to be done to be more transparent and to create, as we have planned in the work program and in the midterm strategy, to enhance stakeholder engagement. As I said already, the next concrete step will be the publication of the BEREC opinion to the SMP Guidelines, to the draft SMP Guidelines, Monday next week. And as always, as the year has started, we are already thinking ahead to the next year, and in a few weeks we will also request inputs for the BEREC work program for 2019. And finally, I want to make some comments on the negotiations on the European Communications Code. I don't want to comment all the things that are going on. It's going back and forth, and every day, several times, I receive a new information package, what is done here in Brussels. But I want to highlight one particular issue that is of utmost interest and importance for BEREC, and this is the peer review. We have learned that there is obviously an agreement on the peer review between the co-legislators, and so far there is no role foreseen for BEREC. I have to clearly say that we are very disappointed on that, because spectrum management has many aspects that have competition impact, and they have competition impact for a very, very long period. So, for instance, spectrum distribution among operators, spectrum caps, spectrum floors, reservation of spectrum for new entrants, spectrum sharing and pooling, putting the right level of reserve prices. All of that has huge impact on the competition on the communication markets. In addition, if you think of inter-platform competition, if you think of all that what I've mentioned have clear impact on the auction design, so the peer review is much more than just a technical exercise to do the right thing, but it is extremely important on the market shaping aspects of our work. So from our point of view, the peer review, if it stays as it is a missed opportunity to achieve the objective of greater harmonization. So we would be very happy to collaborate with other bodies like, in particular, RSPG on this peer review, because I think that we have to collaborate on this extremely important issue together with experts from BEREC, with experts from RSPG, to achieve greater harmonization across Europe on spectrum management. So that's what I wanted to say to the communication code. And what remains to say is that our next plenary will be in June in Poland, and the next public debriefing will be on June 20th. And now I'm happy to take your questions. Thank you.
Yes, good afternoon. My name is Friedrich de Bakker. Thank you very much for the presentation. I work for Telefonica. If I may, I have 3 questions actually. One on the spectrum issue. I mean, we totally agree that the peer review is a very important part of the code, and of course, spectrum license conditions have a very big impact on competition. As you also mentioned spectrum in the beginning regarding 5G, as that is strategic priority. Of course, we know that a lot of NRAs don't have a spectrum authority. So, I mean, do you have already in mind some concrete reports or joint projects with RSPG? Because sometimes, well, you did in the past joint reports, stakeholders, or workshops or whatever. So that's one question. And then on 2 other topics. On the one on the access and choice for disabled users you mentioned in AOB. I just wonder access and choice to what kind of services in particular? Is this just the traditional telecommunication services, or is that broader? And perhaps a last question on the issue that you also mentioned of the impact of content services and devices on the open internet. You said that the first results were that the gatekeeper role of App Store seems to be not too much concerning. Anyway, you will have further look on it. I don't know if you can comment a bit more on that. Especially also, I think I read today that in France, they don't share the point that it's not an issue, because I understand that the minister asked to look especially at the gatekeeper role of the 2 main app stores. So perhaps within BEREC, there are some diverging views on that, I guess. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you. First of all, I forgot to say that, of course, today we will ask, we will respond to Twitter questions. So if you want to send us some questions via this channel, we will answer some of these questions, but due to time constraints, not all of them, just to mention that. Well, on your questions, maybe first on spectrum. We have, in the meantime, established a very good working relationship with RSPG. We don't, as BEREC, we don't want to double the work of RSPG. We want to avoid overlaps between the work of RSPG and BEREC. Normally, if we do something on spectrum, as a starting point, we often invite RSPG to present what they have done so far. So we have a very good collaboration with RSPG. So far, there are no concrete plans due to the fact that not all NRAs have competences on that. This might change under the code, but so far there are no concrete steps planned. On the disabled end users, I think we should see that very broadly, because disabled end users, it's such a wide spectrum. So, and it's, from my perspective, definitely not looking into just only traditional ECS. We have to see this in a very broad sense, and in particular, there are services more and more of relevance that are provided over the top. So we have to look at it in the sense of the whole ecosystem. And on the devices, we are electronic communication regulators. So what we have done here is, with a starting point, in particular on bundles, and what is more or less in the core of our remits. But we have, of course, we have identified app stores, operating systems, and so on as kind of black spots. So we reached out there. I know the work that has been done by RCEP. I'm not sure whether there are diverging views, but they are going much further. I think looking into the future, there is the need to look at this closer, for sure. But coming back to the competences we have, it might be a little bit difficult for BEREC and the NRAs to do so. But there is, of course, more room for looking into that. And I personally see this contribution of RCEP as a kind of kickoff to start discussing on that.
Hello, I'm Yulia Krikova from Inmarsat, a satellite mobile company. Question about net neutrality. You mentioned that the review of the public consultation will be submitted for analysis to the Commission. And would you detail what would happen next after the analysis of the Commission is done? Will it go back to BEREC, or what happens afterward?
Okay, so we are now collecting input. We will prepare our report to give our input to the Commission, and what the Commission does with it, I don't know, or we don't know. So it's up to the Commission to take it or leave it or whatever.
Good afternoon. My name is Guillaume Lebrun from Qualcomm. You mentioned a .econ Axon study on the 5G deployment and future business models. I can't find it on the internet. Will it be published at some stage?
Yeah, sure. It will be published today, or is already published. So I don't know, but should be on the web in a minute. Okay, it is already published now. We are waiting for a Twitter question.
Well, maybe while you're waiting for the Twitter question to arrive. Hi, my name is Oliver Fuke. I'm with ACTA, and I wanted to ask you on a topic which I think you mentioned briefly, and I also saw the press release, but I would like you to say a bit more about what the results of the interaction between you, ENISA, and the RSPG on 5G and security were, and notably where you see this going during your tenure, but also in view of the deliberations that you're going to start on the 2019 work program. What is security going to mean for NRAs going forward? And specifically, do you see an intersection between security matters and the traditional bread and butter, which is access regulation, and where would you see that going?
Thank you. I think the main purpose of this this workshop was more a learning session because, as I said, not all regulators have competencies on cybersecurity, and as far as I can see, that within member states, so security is very widespread. You see it in the defense area, in the interior, you see it in the public sector, and so on. So there are many stakeholders involved in security. So it's a little bit difficult, and everybody looks at security from its own angle. What we have done is we have gathered a few experts who took a look at their aspect of cybersecurity, and it was to learn, to better understand what the needs are, for instance, and what means end-to-end security from the devices over several networks, and what are the prerequisites. In particular, we touched the topic of IoT devices, low-cost devices without maybe security by design. So this will have a huge impact. So it was more as a starting point and a start of a learning journey, I would say, on the topic of security. As far as I can see, there is no further work planned this year on cybersecurity, but of course, we will have that on the radar for the future. Yeah, we have a Twitter case, we have a Twitter question on a particular case of net neutrality. Unfortunately, we are not entitled to talk about that. So if somebody has questions on a particular case, he has to approach the national regulator. So yeah, if there is no further question, I mean, it was the start of the year. Normally the plenary is going very smoothly, and so did the public debriefing, I had the impression. Thank you very much for being here, and see you next time in June after the Dansk plenary. Thank you very much. Have a nice day.